What if one mistake tied two strangers together in a way neither of them ever expected? The wind in Wyoming territory was cruel that April. It scraped across the dry valley like a thief, stealing what little moisture winter had left behind. The ground was cracked, the grass brittle, and the small town of Red Bluff was covered in a fine layer of dust that slipped through every window and wall. The town was tiny, just a stop along the new railroad line. A saloon with a swinging door, a general store that doubled as a post office, a white church with a tall steeple, and a livery stable were the whole of it. Cole Hart rode into town on his buckskin gelding, Dust Devil. At 38, he knew this land, like he knew the lines in his own hands. 10 years a widower had carved a deep quiet inside him. His ranch sat in the foothills, his cattle depended on a thin stream called Spring Creek, and his whole life followed the strict rhythm of work and survival. He didn't expect change. He didn't welcome it. He only wanted to keep what little he had left. But that morning, when he tied his reins to the hitching post outside the store, he saw her again. Leah Byrne, the new schoolteacher from Missouri. She stood on the boardwalk holding a book, speaking softly to the blacksmith's young son. The wind tugged at her dress and pulled loose strands of her dark honey hair. Something about her didn't fit this rough valley. She was a gentle color in a world painted brown and gray. Every time Cole had seen her in the last 2 months, the same thought hit him. She didn't belong here, not in this dry valley, not near men like him. He gave her a small nod, then stepped inside the store. Silas Croft, the store owner and postmaster, peered at him over spectacles. "Need supplies?" he asked. "Flour." "Salt," Cole answered, his voice rough from disuse. Silas nodded, then reached under the counter and pulled out a long brown envelope. "Got a letter for you. Official. From the land bank in Cheyenne." Cole frowned. He never got letters. His dealings with the bank were simple. He paid on time. He didn't ask for favors. Nothing should be coming. He tucked the envelope into his coat, paid for his supplies, and loaded the pack mule. But the letter weighed heavy in his pocket like a stone. He tried to ignore it, but something inside him twisted with unease. Finally, unable to stand the curiosity, he opened it. The words blurred for a moment before sinking in. A boundary change. A survey error. Rights to Spring Creek no longer listed under one name. It was now a joint claim. The two names printed side by side made his breath stop. Cole T. Hart. Leah M. Byrne. He stared at the paper, certain he had read it wrong. The schoolteacher? A woman with no land, no cattle, no reason to be tied to him or his property? It made no sense. It had to be a mistake. He looked up just as she stepped out of the store, holding a small parcel. Her bright eyes met his. She gave a polite nod. Cole didn't nod back. He crossed the street in long, angry strides. "Miss Byrne," he said, his voice sharper than he intended. She turned, surprised. Up close, he noticed the freckles on her nose. She clutched her parcel tighter. "Yes, Mr. Hart," quote. He held out the letter. "You need to read this." She unfolded it. As her eyes moved over the page, color rose in her cheeks. Her hand trembled. This cannot be right," she whispered. "I don't own land. I'm only the schoolteacher." "That paper says otherwise," Cole replied, his tone flat and controlled. "Says you and I now share Spring Creek." Before she could answer, a shadow blocked the sun. Cole stiffened. Asa Crow, the wealthiest, most feared man in the valley. Big shoulders. Small eyes, a smile that never reached them. He was known for buying land cheap, bullying neighbors, and pushing the sheriff around like a hired hand. "Well now," Crow drawled, eyeing the letter in Leah's hands. "Looks like the wind blew trouble your way, Hart." Cole clenched his fists. "This doesn't concern you." Crow chuckled. "Everything in this valley concerns me, especially water." His gaze slid to Leah, slow and unwelcome. "And especially our pretty new schoolteacher." Leah lifted her chin. "I am not distressed, Mr. Crow. There has been a mistake." Quote, "Maybe," Crow said, pulling on his cigar, "or maybe the truth is just coming out." Cole stepped between them. "This is private." Crow smirked. "Nothing about water is private in a dry land. If you two find yourselves with a partnership you can't handle, I'm always in the market. That creek is worth more than gold now that the drought's coming." Cole's jaw tightened. His blood pounded hot with anger, something he hadn't felt in years. Crow walked away toward the saloon, the dust swirling at his boots. Leia handed the letter back with shaking fingers. "I want no part of this," she said softly. "I never asked for this." "Neither did I," Cole replied. "But we're tangled now, and that puts us both in Crow's sights." For a moment, they stood in the dusty street, two strangers, bound by a mistake that threatened everything both of them held dear. Leia drew a slow breath, gathering courage. "We need to fix it." "Cheyenne is 3 days away," Cole said. "By the time we go and return, Crow could own the whole valley." "Then what?" she asked. "We fix it here," he said firmly. "Meet me at the creek at sunrise. We need to see the land ourselves." She nodded, though fear flickered in her eyes. Cole mounted his horse and rode out of town. He didn't look back, but he could feel her watching him, this stranger who now held half his future by accident. Above them, the Wyoming wind carried dust and the smell of a storm that had nothing to do with weather. What if fixing one mistake pulled two strangers into a fight they never asked for? The sunrise over the Bighorn Mountains was soft and pink, but the valley below was cold, still locked in blue shadow. The wind carried the bite of winter, even though spring was supposed to be settling in. Cole was already at Spring Creek when Leia arrived. His horse grazed on a patch of thin grass, and Cole stood with his arms crossed, studying the trickle of water as if it were a living thing. Leia approached slowly, her boots crunching on the frosted dirt. She wore her thickest shawl, but the wind still found a way to chill her to the bone. "Mr. Hart," she said. "Miss Byrne." His expression was unreadable. She couldn't tell if he was angry, tired, or simply worn down by the weight of it all. He pointed toward the thin silver line of water. "This is Spring Creek." She stepped closer. It wasn't much, just a narrow stream carving its way through dry soil. But on either side, the ground was soft and green where the water touched it. New grass pushed up through the earth. Willow shrubs leaned toward the moisture. She understood why this mattered. Cole walked beside the creek. "It starts high up in the mountains. Snowmelt keeps it running. 2 miles across my ranch, then it sinks into the ground again. It feeds every cow, every calf. It's my whole operation." His voice was plain, quiet, heavy with truth. They followed the creek upstream. Cole pointed out the irrigation ditches dug by his father. He showed where the stone wall had been built to divert water. The place told a story of years of hard labor, sunburned days and nights spent fighting drought. Leia listened, her mind turning over the words in the letter. The original marker, where was it placed? Quote, Cole stopped and pointed to a bare patch of ground. "Here, my father drove an iron stake right into that spot." "And the railroad?" she asked. "Pulled it up during construction. Put a new one 200 yards east. That's what started all this." His jaw tightened. "Progress," he muttered, the word bitter on his tongue. For the next few days, their lives fell into a strange rhythm. Leia taught school until late afternoon, dismissing her small group of students with smiles and words of encouragement. Then, she walked the dirt road to Cole's ranch. He would be waiting near the creek, tools in hand. They worked until the sky turned purple and the valley grew cold. He showed her how to dig out the clogged ditch, how to patch the bank with stones, how to use a heavy sledgehammer to set a fence post deep enough to survive the wind. She insisted on helping with everything. Once, he tried to take the hammer from her. "It's heavy, Miss Byrne," he said. "So am I," she fired back. Her first swing hit the post at an angle. The second was stronger. The third landed with a clean, solid thud that echoed through the valley. Cole watched her, something like respect flickering in his eyes. But the valley watched them too. Red Bluff was a town that noticed everything. The women whispered behind hands. The men smirked outside the saloon. A young, unmarried teacher spending evenings with a widower rancher? Talk spread like wildfire. Leah heard it first on Saturday. She was looking at fabric outside the general store when two women whispered loudly enough for her to hear. "She's at the Hart place every dusk." "Not proper. 10 years a widower, he must be lonely." Her cheeks burned and her pride tightened like a knot in her chest. Cole felt it too. He could feel eyes on his back every time he rode through town. Men quieted when he passed. He hated it. But the worst of it came from Asa Crow's camp. One afternoon, Leah and Cole were measuring the bank with a rope when two riders appeared on the ridge above them. The sheriff, Bart Lusk, and Jed Pike, Crow's hired hand. Sheriff Lusk called down, "Looks like you got yourself a new ranch hand, Hart. A real pretty one." Pike laughed, an ugly sound that echoed off the rocks. Cole stepped in front of Leah, his jaw tight. "You're on private land." "Is it?" Lusk asked with a sneer. "Heard that creek ain't yours alone anymore. Heard the whole valley might have a say now." They stayed a while, just watching, waiting, trying to shake them, then rode off. Leah's hands trembled slightly. "They're trying to scare us." "They're doing a fine job," Cole said, his voice low. A few days later, the blow they didn't expect came in town. A summons nailed to the town hall door. A public hearing. A community dispute over Spring Creek. Led by the council. Oversaw by Asa Crow's people. A legal trap dressed up as fairness. Crow was moving fast. That evening, Leah didn't leave for town. Instead, she sat at Cole's rough wooden table in his small ranch house. The lamp's yellow glow filled the room. Cole stared at the flame. "He's using the council to steal the water. The law's in his pocket." Leah shook her head. "Not all of it." She pulled out the old deed Cole had shown her. The papers were brittle with age, but still legible. "This deed predates the railroad," she said. "Your father's claim is primary. The survey error doesn't override that. I can argue it." Cole looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time. Not a mistake tied to his land. A partner. A fierce one. "You think we can win this?" he asked quietly. "We have to," she said. "Or Crow takes everything." Cole exhaled slowly. For 10 years he had fought alone, against the weather, against loss, against silence. Now he wasn't alone. A storm howled outside the walls, carrying dust, and a threat they both felt deep in their bones. But inside the cabin, a soft steadiness filled the room. Two strangers, pushed together by a wrong letter, now stood side by side in a fight far bigger than either had imagined. And the hearing was only days away. What if the one mistake that brought them together became the only thing that could save them? The day of the hearing came with a heavy heat that pressed down on the town of Red Bluff. Dust hung in the air like smoke. By noon, the town hall was packed full. Every bench was taken. People stood in the doorway, craning their necks to watch. Cole and Leah sat together at a small table facing the front. Cole's jaw was tight. His hands were clenched into fists on his knees. 10 years of hard work sat on his shoulders like a weight. Leah beside him looked calm, but Cole could see the tension in her eyes. Asa Crow stood near the front with Sheriff Lusk and Jed Pike behind him. Crow didn't need a gun to make people afraid. His presence alone made the air seem colder. Judge Miller raised a gavel. "This hearing will decide the disputed ownership of Spring Creek." Crow's lawyer spoke first. He talked about fairness. He talked about community rights. He praised the railroad's accurate survey. He said Cole's deed was old, outdated, not in line with modern needs. Then he called his witness, Sheriff Bart Lusk. Lusk swaggered to the front. He pointed right at Leah. "I seen this woman out at the Hart place," he said loudly. "Evenings, nights." He shrugged. "A man alone, 10 years, a young woman new to town. Seems mighty convenient she suddenly owns his water." The crowd murmured. The words sat in the air like poison. Cole's chair scraped loudly against the floor as he stood, fury written across his face. "You liar!" he growled, but Leah grabbed his arm quickly. "Cole, no. If you stand up now, we lose." He froze, breathing hard, anger shaking in his chest. Slowly he sat again. Leah stood. "Your Honor, the defense calls Reverend Hale." The preacher walked up and spoke gently about Leah's character, her kindness, her honesty, her work with the children. Then Leah called May Ricard, the saloon owner. The room buzzed. May was not a woman known for church behavior or polite speeches, but she walked forward steady and unafraid. "I don't know about deeds," she said, "but the night Cole's boundary marker got chopped up, 2 men came into my saloon bragging." She pointed straight at Lusk and Pike. "Those 2, they did it." A gasp rippled across the room. Lusk turned red with anger. Crow's face tightened, the first crack in his calm. "Then Leah did something no one expected. Your Honor," she said softly, "I asked permission for one of my students to speak." A boy of 12 stepped forward. Eli, the shy Navajo boy who barely spoke in class. He looked down, then gathered courage. "When the flood came behind the school," he said, "I got stuck. Everyone ran." He swallowed hard. "But Miss Byrne came back. She saved me. She ain't what the sheriff said." The room went silent. A child's truth carried more weight than all the fancy speeches. With witnesses done, Leah turned to the law. She spoke clearly and simply. She explained the old deed. She explained why the survey mistake couldn't change it. She used facts, not fear. Her voice never wavered. When she finished, the room was so quiet Cole could hear his own heartbeat. Judge Miller looked at the papers, then at Leah, then at Crow. Finally, he said, "This court cannot rule today. I order a 30-day stay and an independent survey." The gavel hit the table. Crow stormed out, murder in his eyes. It was not a full victory. It was a warning. That night, Cole and Leah sat at the table in his small cabin. The lamp glowed warm, but the air around them felt cold. "He won't wait 30 days, Cole said. "Crow will strike first." Leah nodded. "I know." They started sleeping in shifts, watching the ranch, listening for footsteps, watching the shadows move in the night. On the 3rd night, it came. Smoke, then fire. A wide line of flames rolled across the dry grass toward the herd. Crow had set it to drive the cattle toward Blackwood Gulch, a deadly drop. Cole yelled for Leah and Hank. They saddled the horses and rode straight into the firelight. The heat was like opening a furnace door. Cattle screamed. The ground shook under their hooves. "We have to turn the lead steers," Cole shouted. The 3 of them rode hard, firing pistols into the air, pushing the terrified animals away from the cliff. Then, lightning split the sky. Rain poured down, drenching them in seconds, beating the fire back. But the mud became dangerous. Horses slipped. Steers slid. Through the storm, Cole saw them. Lusk and Pike were trying to force the last of the cattle off the cliff. A bullet tore past Cole's ear. The next one grazed his arm, spinning him in the saddle. "Cole!" Leah screamed. Lusk took aim again. Leah lifted the Winchester just like Cole had taught her. Breathe out. Squeeze. Don't pull. She aimed not at Lusk, but at the ground in front of his horse. The rifle kicked hard. The horse reared. Lusk flew off and hit the mud hard. Pike turned and fled. But it wasn't over. Up on the ridge, lightning showed a dark shape. Asa Crow. He raised a long rifle, aiming straight at Cole's heart. Cole raised his gun too. Pain in his arm, rage in his chest. He was ready to end it. But Leah rode to his side, reached out, and pressed her hand over his. "Justice," she whispered, "not revenge." Her words cut through the storm. He lowered his gun. Just then lanterns appeared behind them. May Ricard and young Eli had followed the riders and seen everything. Witnesses. Crow hesitated. His power depended on darkness. Now lights were shining on him. He backed away into the night, knowing it was over. Days passed. The marshal came from Cheyenne. Lusk was taken away in chains. A warrant was issued for Crow. The new surveyor arrived and drove a fresh iron stake deep into the ground, exactly where Cole's father had placed the first one. Judge Miller called the final meeting of the court. "The water rights to Spring Creek," he said firmly, "are the joint property of Cole T. Hart and Liah M. Byrne." A final ruling, a true victory. When they walked out of the town hall, Cole turned to Liah. Everything that had tied them together, the mistakes, the danger, the fear, had transformed into trust, respect, something deep and unspoken. He took a breath. "Liah," he said softly, "will you marry me?" Her eyes filled with tears. Yes. And for the first time in years, Cole felt the weight lift from his chest. Not because the fight was over, but because he finally had someone to fight with. Someone to build a future with. Someone to love. The dry valley, the creek, the mountains, they were no longer his alone. They were theirs. And in the quiet space between them, something strong and steady took root. Something that would outlast drought, wind, and fire. Love. A simple, powerful promise carved deep in their hearts like the letters on the cottonwood post. C and L. Forever.